I hope this review is viewed as somewhat momentous when looked back at from the future, as I'm reviewing the first book in a new monograph series by SCS Press. The series is Studies in Judeo-Christian Thought. I hope this series has a long and wide reach. May all those who are interested in quality, high-level Christian academic work, especially from a dispensational perspective, pick up these monographs and support this new series. So may this be the start of something with a bigger impact than could have been foreseen. Now, book one of Studies in Judeo-Christian Thought is Paul's Fusion of Scripture, analyzing Pauline literary techniques, hermeneutics, and theology in composite quotations by Brant Belford. Now, the subtitle explains it all, but Brent takes the reader into a deep dive into all the places in the New Testament where Paul uses composite quotations from the Old Testament. Now, composite or fused quotes are those places where Paul takes two or more Old Testament passages and then combines them together with or without connecting phrasing in order to make a singular point. And this is a quality work. Belford has clearly done his homework as he presents his work in a way that is clear and well formatted to help the reader understand both how and why Paul made use of these fused quotes from the Hebrew Bible. Now, I have a few issues with the work, which I'll bring up in a moment, but I want to say overall, this will be a book that I will refer to in the future. Anytime I'm doing sermon prep or Bible study and I need to dig into one of Paul's fused quotations, I'm going back to this book. It is a thorough examination of an oft-neglected subject, which should make for a good reference for Bible students in the years to come. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books about how we interpret Scripture, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with my latest book review. Also, share this video with others to let them know about studies in Judeo-Christian thought. And I once again want to say a huge thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members. Your support allows me to cover the cost that comes with keeping up with Rev Reads so I can keep putting these reviews out. And if you have benefited from Rev Reads, please consider supporting the channel. My beginning membership cost is only $3 a month. The first thing I want to note as a reviewer is that this is not a book for the novice Bible student. And what I mean is, if you don't know intermediate Greek, you're really going to struggle making it through this one, as there is a lot of untranslated Greek throughout, and even a few quotations from German works that I wish were translated in the footnotes. Let me cover right now a few things that I didn't like about the book in this place in the review. First, I thought the time spent in Philo and the Damascus rules, fused quotations, was too long for me. I know one of Belford's goals is to compare Paul's use of fused quotations to these two other authors, but reading about 70 pages on Philo and the Damascus rule is just too long for me. I wish it could have been shortened up in some way. The other thing I would have added is that I wish more time was spent comparing the Masoretic text or the Hebrew text to the Septuagint and Paul's wordings. The book is mainly comparing Paul's use and wording in the New Testament to the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, and I would have liked a little more emphasis on the Hebrew. There are even these excellent charts in the book where you can see the Septuagint and Paul's use of the Septuagint side by side. And I just wish there could have been some way, maybe adding a second chart each time to show the Hebrew side by side with Paul's Greek text in the New Testament. But I gotta say, props to these charts overall. I thought they were an excellent visual presentation. They really helped me easily grasp the differences between what Paul wrote in comparison to the Septuagint, and it made my engagement with the passages more just enjoyable and easy to get through when going through Belford's work and also in the future going through the biblical text. Now, what Belford does in this book is he provides the reader with, first, the passage under examination. And he gives a few introductory words, the passage that we're going to be studying, and then he looks at how Paul fused the two or more biblical passages together. That is the basic literary features of Paul's fusion of the text. Then Belford looks at the why. And this looks at Paul's hermeneutical practice. And I believe this is helpful not only to see Paul's hermeneutics for the passage at hand, but also this is an overall interesting look at just how Paul handles the Hebrew Bible as a whole. Next, he looks at the what is the theological contribution that this fused text makes to Paul's theological argument in the New Testament context. So what we get to see is both what these passages meant to Paul in their Old Testament context, and then how he uses them in the New Testament context, really giving us a full picture of Paul's understanding and use of the Hebrew Bible. And then don't forget, at the end of each of Belford's examination of each passage, you have that excellent chart to conclude it. And then after going through all of Paul's uses of fused texts in the New Testament, then Belford compares Paul's handling of the Old Testament to how Philo and the Damascus Rule handled the Old Testament. Interestingly, showing us that Paul at times is more like Philo. At other times, he's more like the Damascus Rule. And it's also interesting to see Paul's willingness to amend the text to fit his context. Now, most of those emendations are really meant to fit Paul's wording of the overall passage and to help that flow better with the syntax of those two Old Testament passages and to help fit them together. What I mean is they don't change the meaning of the passage, they only change the style so that it flows better for the reader. But there are other places, mind you, not many, but there are some where Paul really changes the Hebrew Bible when he uses it in the New Testament in surprising ways. As Belford says, Paul is open and creative in his use of the Old Testament. Another interesting note in this book is the coverage of the issue of, was Paul transparent that he was using two or more passages? And what I mean is, did Paul make it clear in his quotation that he was quoting from two different Hebrew texts, or did he join them together to make it look as if he was only using one? And I felt like this was really interesting to look into for the reason that, thanks to our English Bible notes today, we don't need to give this issue a second thought if Paul was transparent or not, because we have these notes in the center columns of our Bibles or off to the side that automatically tell us if Paul is using one passage or two or three, and we don't even need to think about the significance of what does it mean that Paul is not transparent that he's using multiple passages. So to have us think through this in Belford's work, I thought that was a really interesting thing because our English Bibles normally do that work for us. So what would it mean if they didn't? Overall, I found this to be a helpful work that I will refer to again in the future. Now, I gotta say again, I wish there was less Philo here. I would have taken Philo and the Damascus Rule out, and instead I would have given that place to the fused texts that are used by other New Testament authors. But overall, this was a really helpful work. It was clear in its format, really excellent charts, great on that. So I really enjoyed Belford's examination of Paul's fused quotations, and this will be a helpful work for me in the future, and I also believe for other pastors and scholars in the years to come.